Thank you. Fantastic. Well, hello, everyone. And it's an absolute pleasure to be there with you today. I am usually in Colombo, but you caught me on a day when I'm not. And it's wonderful to be able to just join you in the room today and to talk about the landscape and what's going on out there. As you heard in the introduction, my name's Mimi. And I spend most of my life looking at empathy in the business world and across industries as to how we use understanding to build our industries and our businesses and our future. I've been part of the wider extended team delivering this work for about a year now. And I remember so clearly in the kickoff meeting when everyone was in the room, including the EU representatives, talking about the scope and potential for this platform. And today I feel as excited as I did a year ago that we're having these conversations and that all of you are in the room coming together to look at the future of wellness across our island. So today I really want to look at the theme that's on the slide here, which is how can wellness revitalize Sri Lanka? And of course, in the last, let's say 4 or 5 years, we haven't had our easiest years across the island. So it's definitely the time to look at how we revitalize the island and how we do that with all of the wisdom, talent, and professionalism that is sitting in the room today. So that's the big theme that I really want to take you through, which is looking at an era of regrowth, of finding new energy for Sri Lanka and all of the expertise that we have, which is unique. People often ask me, Mimi, why do you live in Sri Lanka? There's many reasons, but one of them is how unbelievably resilient and tenacious the Sri Lankans are, how much passion and expertise there are on the island ready to grow and face the future, regardless of the years that have gone by. So let's look a little bit at how we do this. How do we use the wellness agenda to drive growth during and after the crisis years? I really have been asking myself the question for the last 6 months, can the practice of Ayurvedic wellness really turn around our economy? And I think I'm not alone when I say that the answer is yes, this is part of the future of Sri Lanka. What we know about the travel and tourism industry, of course, is that it is a unique driver of growth and development in any country, right? And the returns are amongst the greatest when you compare that to other sectors. So the ability for us as practitioners across wellness and Ayurveda to bring in tourists has a huge impact across the country in many different ways. There was a quote here from the Centre of Policy Alternatives. And the gentleman said, in this country, in Sri Lanka, you can have tourism 365 days of the year, and yet we have never quite reached our full potential. When you look at the numbers that were coming in around 2014, 15, and 16, we were seeing great growth in this area. And of course, the understanding of all that you can offer in the wellness space was growing with it. But of course, since 2018 and all of the things that have happened since then, we have seen a sway away perhaps from the investment and engagement into this industry. So truly, this is a time of opportunity. And I hope that this presentation today gives you that energy for that opportunity, because it really is time to stand and own our future. The world is ready. I'm going to talk about that today and truly fuel a significant part of our guest choices, the ones that are arriving into Sri Lanka, hopefully before they plan even, with the power of Ayurvedic health, healing, and experience. And I put experience there for a very specific reason. I actually have studied, definitely not as much as most of you, but nearly 1,000 hours of Ayurvedic health. And I know, as a previous non-practitioner, how important the experience is. Yes, this is about health. Yes, this is about healing, but it is also about the experience that surrounds that is offered through our clinics, through our hotels, through our experiences. I have spent most of my career working across marketing and branding, and I truly believe the sentence at the bottom there, which is that it's time to brand and deliver Sri Lankan wellness to the world, which is, of course, why you're all gathered today together. This really is a sector that can fuel our island. And the work that you're doing, yes, it's about your businesses and your sectors and your practitioners, but it's also about the island around you, right? Infrastructure and transport, healthcare, education and employment, through the work we do in wellness, we are able to elevate all three of these pillars and many more across social recovery and growth. This sector can be directly responsible, not just for economic growth across our country, but by actually bringing in talent and other people from across the world that can help us grow and recover as an industry. So Ayurveda can literally revitalize Sri Lanka. And a lot of the work that you're going to be talking about in these workshops today around competency building, training, skill development are the path to create that revitalization. So not only is the Ayurvedic health revitalizing people, but it can revitalize our economy. What really inspires me about the tourism industry at large is that it is the underdeveloped regions that have the most to gain. We know, as I touched on earlier, tourism drives social mobility. It enables people to come out of training, to move up or across in their world. It's employment generating. I'm sure you're going to talk a lot today about that, around how do we train at large? How do we build capacity into our economy? It enables those today that perhaps don't have formal qualifications to enter the job market. And I'm going to touch on that later when I look a little bit at women and how perhaps we encourage more women, more Sri Lankan women, to come into the industry with us. It accelerates social reform. It's definitely an agent for economic empowerment. And it drives not only growth, but diversification as well. And I'm going to touch on that later, because it's not just the core offering of the service in your spas, your hotels, your clinics, but of course the entire ecosystem around that. Later on, I'm going to look a little bit at Bali and what Bali did in this space. And one of the great things they did is really empower the local communities to support that wellness experience, which is why I was saying it's not just the actual healing and health itself, although that's of course our core, but the full experience can enable you to bring up the entire town or areas surrounding your service offering. So regions like Sri Lanka, countries like Sri Lanka, can gain hugely from not only obviously tourism, but our unique point of difference, which is wellness. It is Ayurveda. You know, along with India, who share this with us, we truly are the leaders and founders of some of the most ancient health wisdom that the world has today. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about this specific work, you will have seen this, I'm sure. This is a screenshot from the website behind the platform and the program that you're all talking about today. There were three things I wanted to highlight as we go into some of these potential areas of growth. One is, of course, to raise the profile. You can see that at the top there in the purpose of the program, being developed to raise the profile and the quality, the quality standards. There is so much to offer. I always say that I'm like Sri Lanka's cheerleader. I'm always out there telling the world not to watch BBC News and to come and visit Sri Lanka. We need to raise our profile. We need to shout more about all the wonderful things we have on the island. The second piece is, of course, that final sentence there, attracting tourists who are seeking a vacation with a wellness component. I'm going to look at the data around that today and how many of the trends are pointing towards this. The world is ready to come and see you. And as the world becomes more tumultuous, COVID-19 may have almost finished in most parts of the world, but the tumultuous nature of our economies, our social emotional well-being is on a road downhill. So as that tension and that conflict of sort of the human race continues, you and your businesses are poised to pick up from that and help people live better. And then the third piece, which I think is so important, and I can't see all of your faces, but I can see lots of ladies there today, is that this project will directly benefit women, the unemployed, and marginalized groups. I recently did a lot of speaking in Colombo around International Women's Day last week and the future of women in Sri Lanka and how we empower more women to join us. This industry is perfect for it. And yet we have some barriers and some challenges in bringing them in, but the future is very, very bright. And this project is one of the first that all of you can be part of, bringing in more women and again, uplifting our economy in so doing. So it's a really exciting agenda that you're all here, that you have right in front of you. And of course, the team are going to give you all kinds of tools today to bring that to life. What's really exciting about wellness tourism is, of course, that it enables cultural perspective sharing, right? I specialize in empathy, in understanding each other in our businesses, in our lives, in our communities. With every shared experience that you offer the world within wellness, within Ayurveda, whether that's treatment, it's healing, it's nutrition, it's movement, whatever it is, breathing, right? You are creating shared experience. And in that shared experience, we are able to pull the world together from our little island in the world, right? We are able to create social healing. I spend a lot of my time talking about the empathy deficit. That is the lack of empathy that we have in our world. Empathy is about understanding. It's about being able to take perspective of others, understanding other people. It's not an emotion. This is a skill set, and it's one that I train in businesses all around the world. Hence, I'm not in Colombo today. But in the work you're doing, in the wellness tourism that you are able to create and grow, we are able to create shared experiences of Sri Lankans, our community, our culture, our food, and of course, our wellness and our Ayurvedic practices, expertise, and legacy. So this is about being welcome. And we are, right? We are an island who welcomes from the minute you get to the airport. You know, there's like 10 people saying, Ayowan, welcome you to the island, right? So it's a really exciting space that you're in terms of fueling wonder in our world. And the second part of that is really leveraging our people. As I said earlier, the resilience, tenacity, and passion of the Sri Lankans is something that never leaves me. And there are so many parts of building our people that we can use to rebuild Sri Lanka, to rebuild your industry, the industry that you are all already specialists in. And I've put some of them on the right there. I've put build competency, which of course you're going to talk about today, right? Skills, build commitment. And I think, of course, there's a lot of commitment in the room, but we can spread that further from government all the way down through business and the general public. Building pride, because still in Sri Lanka, particularly in the older generation, people don't necessarily understand what Ayurvedic wellness is, what these treatments mean. There is some confusion sometimes about what is just sort of massage for leisure versus the specialism that you are all propagating. So how do we build pride so that all Sri Lankans are talking about this, are proud of this specialism that we have truly built into the DNA of the island? Build our craft out from the world. Again, if you look at Bali as an example, right? When anyone says Bali, tourists world over know exactly what they're referring to, right? They think of Zen, meditation, calm retreats, or perhaps surfing, right? But they have built their craft very clearly. The Balinese culture, the Indonesian way to wellness, health, yoga retreats, very, very clear. So how do we build our craft? Marketing, talking to the world, sharing with the world, so that we truly own Ayurvedic wellness and can pull people in from that. And then the last one is engagement. You need tourists around the world to want to engage with you, right? You need content, whether that's for your hotel or your brand. It's on social media, it's on Instagram perhaps, or Facebook. How do people engage with the work you're doing? How do we engage the world to bring more tourists into the island, onto the island, through our craft? Now, all of those things in that list, you'll see along the side there, I've said social intelligence skill sets, right? Social intelligence is our ability to connect, right? And lots of the training modules that you have online through the team are around social intelligence, customer service, communication, discussion, engagement, how you sell, how you communicate with people, because so much of the wellness experience relies on the person treating you, right? The doctor or the therapist that you're working with. So much of your experience is based on them. So if we're going to go out there and build up competency and pride and passion out in the world, we need, as leaders and specialists, to build our social intelligence. Now, this is a bit long, so any of you that would like these slides are welcome to contact me. I will give you my details at the end. I can give you this presentation. But fundamentally, social intelligence is being able to read people, engage with them, and understand them. Okay. And really what I'm going to talk about today is how we do this in 3 different spaces, right? How do we read, engage, and understand Sri Lankans in order to bring in the talent that we need to build our industry and recover? How do we do that with our guests? How do we train our staff, whether that's sort of reception staff or specialists, to understand and communicate? Perhaps some of that's around learning English as well, or other languages for the tourists coming into the island. And the third is outwardly to the world, right? We want to be as famous as Bali, for example, in the health space. So we're going to have to communicate out there to create that understanding and acknowledgement. So social intelligence is really my passion. How do you help people understand others more? Now, the great thing is, if we manage to get that right, Sri Lanka stands to benefit hugely from these communication skills, right? I believe that nearly everything in life comes down to communication, right? If you've ever had an argument with a family member or your neighbor or your daughter, right? What's the way out of it? The way out of any conflict, any tension is communication. And we are definitely at a point of tension in Sri Lanka, right? We need to communicate our way out of it. And yes, I know there's lots of other things we need to also fix. But 3 key parts that are really positive, okay? As I mentioned earlier, there is more stress in the world. We have nearly 400 million people with depression. 400 million. Beyond that, every 40 seconds, we have a suicide. Can you imagine how many people have died since I have been speaking to you? Okay, we have a huge mental health crisis. We have stress and health issues at the widest possible risk factor that they ever have been. What does that mean? Of course, the wellness industry is booming and demand is increasing. So yes, we are coming out of a tough time as a country, but the world is deeply within that tough time, and they need you. They really, truly do. They need what you do. The second is that the preference for natural and plant-based foods and therapies is growing incrementally. Okay, so there is a huge move across the world to natural and plant-based solutions, foods, and health. So of course that taps brilliantly into what you do. The Chinese and the German consumers are in the top 2 demanding of these segments. And of course, we know in Sri Lanka, we see, or at least we did see, but increasingly again, the Chinese and the Germans coming to the island, right? So you know that the tourists that are coming in are significantly interested in what you offer. We just need a way to communicate and match that to them. The final one you may not be aware of. It's something that I have been reading a lot about recently, which is that there are more female solo travelers than ever before, particularly near us. So huge move in India. And imagine every time I travel to India, which is like every 2 weeks, the Indian people tell me, oh, we love Sri Lanka. Oh, we want to come back to Sri Lanka. I mean, India loves Sri Lanka. I know that's controversial, but they do, right? And there is this huge move of female solo travelers from India and many other countries. In fact, 85% of solo travelers are women. How amazing is that, right? So 85% of all solo travelers are women. The over 50 years segment is growing. So we're seeing lots of older people, perhaps pre-retirement or going into retirement, taking solo trips and just wanting to feel great. They want to feel better. They want to improve their health. Perhaps they want to read a book. They want some escapism. But it's a great opportunity for all of you to communicate and grab those travelers. Bring them in to the safety of your retreats, your centers, your hotels, because they are looking for you. Okay, so when you put those 3 trends together, there is so much opportunity. The world literally demands exactly what you do, right? Well-being, stress reduction, natural and plant-based therapies in a safe and healthy environment. I could literally just call it Ayurveda. That's what the world needs, right? We are heading into a global economic slowdown, but then when aren't we, to be honest, right? Every year, there's another economic drama out there in the world. So I think what's really important is to remember what's on the bottom right, that if we can get this communication right and reach these people, we have a huge chance to benefit both from global guests but also future local talent, making our industry truly interesting and inspiring for the youth of Sri Lanka to come in and practice and lead us into the future. So that's some of the background, and really that's what I want to do for you is the two words on that slide is elevate optimism. I know how tough it's been. I've been there with you. I know how difficult it can feel, especially when so much of our talent is leaving the shores every day, getting on planes and flying off to work in Dubai and Qatar and Australia. But there is so much to be optimistic about, and you have all the tools to really leverage. As I said at the beginning, tourism strengthens societies. We know that. In fact, there's a very interesting talk on this by the World Tourism Association by Theresa May. A few months ago, she was in Saudi Arabia. So if you Google it, it's a really interesting talk. If you Google Theresa May tourism Saudi Arabia, it will come up. She talks a lot about this, about tourism strengthening society and the importance of building tourism to rebuild our societies. I have split this into 3 key focus areas for us today, and I've kept it really simple, hopefully for you to take away and think about. So I've touched on them all already as an introduction. The first is this: we need to encourage more Sri Lankans to join us, okay? It's estimated that we need around 30,000 graduates a year to join the tourism industry at large, not wellness, just tourism at large. And yet we only see around 10,000, okay? So we are already understaffed in the mass tourism, which means, of course, in the wellness tourism, we're even more understaffed, okay? So training and education are not just key, they are critical, they are everything, which is, of course, why you're all there today looking at the modules and the content that has been provided to help build this up, training and education. But beyond that, we all need to work together to do some of these other things on this slide. We need to raise the profile of our industry. We need to help people understand what we do and elevate that locally. We need particularly parents, okay? Parents who have daughters who are maybe anywhere between 17 and 28 right now, right? We need those parents to want their daughters to come and work in our industry. We need them to understand that there's credible qualifications, that they can learn and grow, and that they can lead what is a globally powerful industry. Because as we've seen in that data, the wellness industry is full of some of the sort of top trending areas of the world. And one of the things I really want to do, if anyone wants to join me, is gather some of the leading women in wellness across the world and show them, bring them to Sri Lanka through content, through webinars, inspire them, guys. You have to inspire the young women, and to get to them, you need to inspire their parents, right? So we have to raise the profile of our industry and all the work you do. We need to create inclusion. If we can help other Sri Lankans understand that their, let's say, handmade coconut bowls or any local sambles that they're making, or a local tea producer, or any of the other things that we make on the island, right? How do we pull them into our industry? Okay. How do we ensure that all the guests, let's say one of your hotels or one of your clinics, all the guests that come also can access a series of Ayurvedic bowls with the herbs you said on them, right? So fundamentally, it's co-marketing, right? It's creating products on the island that support the work you do, and in so doing, create inclusion for more Sri Lankans around you. In doing that, you do 2 things. Not only do you rebuild the economy, but you create new ways for your guests to spend money with you, so you make more profit, and you pull Sri Lankans with you because they start to recognize you as an industry that builds their industry, handiworks, crafts, homemade foods, whatever it is. We need to own Ayurveda as uniquely Sri Lankan. Of course, for many of us it is, but I can tell you that from outside Sri Lanka, most people think it's Indian, okay? And I know there's a line between what is and what isn't, but not many people necessarily associate Ayurveda with Sri Lanka purely yet. That's a job to be done. And then, as I said, the last one, engage more women in the industry, driving understanding, appeal, and safety perception around those roles. So that's the first point around building up the industry for the future and helping us build the industry and our island. The second is, of course, around our guests. So Our guests need to be welcomed, and many of you do this brilliantly already. But our service culture is definitely an area of potential improvement, shall we say, across the board. We need to be able to welcome more people into our world and ensure that we're really able to communicate with them. Now, some of this touches just on speaking English, or perhaps other languages, Russian now, maybe German. I'm not going to talk about that today. That's functional training. I'm talking about slightly more elevated than that. How do we drive customer service? How do we ensure excellence in our delivery in the treatment rooms that we're in? How do we balance that very nature-led natural world with a good quality? Because that's what people outside expect, right? They like to think that they want to go to a mud hut, but they don't really want to go to a mud hut. They want to go to something that looks like a mud hut, but is actually super clean and has a lovely modern shower, right? So the Maldives does it brilliantly, like brings the nature inside, right? How do we ensure that we have that excellence in delivery? How do we help our staff be able to be more prompt and efficient in their delivery? And I hope you understand, I've lived there quite a long time now. We're just not as good as some of the other parts of Asia at this. We're not as quick, we're not as prompt, we're not as efficient. That's not to say across the board that's the case, but in the tourism industry, I'm sure many of you have experienced this, where we really need to up our service levels across the country. So that ability is really important. Communication skills, which of course I'm touching on, and many of the modules that you're able to access also talk about. And making sure that we are aligned to the rest of Asia whilst being uniquely Sri Lankan. And that talks to bringing in our cultures, our context. But also, as I said, if you can go to a spa in Thailand, and I know that Ayurveda is not just a spa, but for the want of a comparison, if you go into one of the really top spas in Bangkok, and there are many, I mean, it is perfect, right? From the minute you open the door till the final treatment and they give you some type of beautiful fabric bag to take home your products, right? The entire communication is flawless. And if we have people who are used to that, they've been to Thailand, they've been perhaps to Bali, we need to ensure that we are also aligned, that the ability to do everything from the booking to reading the menu card and knowing what they're getting is aligned, and they know what those benefits are. Another part of that is ensuring our language, and I'm going to touch on it later, is also aligned. So if consumers, guests, tourists are used to certain words around massage or nutrition or wellness, yoga, meditation, choose those words, right? They may not perfectly reflect your offering, because your offering may actually be far more complex, have far more legacy and sort of science behind it. But you need to communicate it in a way that they understand. People need to be able to buy your product. And sometimes that means communicating in a way that you wouldn't necessarily communicate it amongst each other as specialists. So how do we ensure best-in-class service to our guests so that we're really driving that experience? And then the third one is really around marketing, okay? Stories to our guests worldwide. Okay, how do we reach more people? Okay, telling our story and creating our point of difference in new ways. And we need to do that in a way that drives emotional connection and engagement with Sri Lanka as the leading destination of health and wellness for our times. And because we've had such a hard 3 years, 5 years, there's never been a better time to tell that story, because who better to really drive a new destination for health and wellness than an island that has been through so much turmoil that they have to refresh and restart. A huge part around this, I touched on the last slide as well, is clarifying and simplifying, help people understand what it is, what are the herbs, what are the treatments, what does detoxify mean, what are your services in that space. But the third one on that list is aligned to trends. And I know as specialists and professionals, sometimes we hate this, okay, because we don't like a trend and we think it's a passing thing and these youth and all that stuff, right? But if it's trending, tap into it, okay? Because if people are consuming it all over the world, they will consume it with you. I'm going to look at some of them later, but that could be plant-based eating, for example, which is sweeping the planet right now. No, plant-based eating is not the only or core part of Ayurvedic wellness. but it is relevant. So you can hook them on that, and then you can educate them on all the other areas. We need to be able to show benefits. This is also something that I have found we are not very good at within Sri Lanka. Tell them what the benefits are, not just what the treatments are. What can they expect? If they come and see you for a week or a day or an hour, what is the benefit? What are they going to take out of that? We live in such a consumer-driven world that is what consumers are looking for. You need to elevate those benefits for them and make it really, really sort of consumable. So they can tell their friends, hey, do you want to come to Sri Lanka with me? Because I'm going to get better at this, feel less that, and do more of this. And their friends can say, that sounds good. Yeah, count on me. I'll come, right? So we have to move to that benefit-led need state. And the last one is to move beyond stereotypes and cliches. And what I mean by that is lots of the communication around our island historically is very, very similar, right? Lots of palm trees, oceans, tuk-tuks, temples, all those things are important, okay? But we have to move beyond them because everybody's seen them and nobody's paying any attention. They know we're there. You know, when I travel now in the world and I say, oh, I live in Sri Lanka, it's rare that someone doesn't know where it is. They know that Sri Lanka exists. They just have no idea why they'd visit, right? Because it's easier to go to Bali or to go to one of the more well-known areas in Thailand. So we need to move beyond them. They are important. They are who we are, right? But there is more to us than that. And all of you in this room are embodying that. This wellness agenda gives us the opportunity to move beyond that. So I said to you earlier that I was going to look a little bit at Bali, because they are a good example. You know, they took a very similar landscape on an island and created a very healthy economy around wellness. So I found 4 things that I thought might be interesting for you to think about today. And they all link, interestingly, back to those 3. So of those 3 areas that I defined of critical pieces, the things that Bali have done all fit into that strategy. So again, you can take this deck away. I won't read every word, but the first one is around spa and holistic wellness management related to improvement of service and hospitality. A lot of your conversations today are around this: talent, customer service, communication, right? It is integral. And Bali spent a lot of time and money in their strategy, their marketing, their recruitment, and HR to build this. So many of those spas took HR people from the corporate world. And yes, it was an investment, but they had to. If you want to bring in loads more talent and young people, they're not only going to come because you say you'll train them, right? They could work somewhere else. They could go work in the Shangri-La, right? And they'll get all kinds of other stuff. So we have to bring employee education and well-being into the wellness industry. The second, learning from Bali, is to promote wellness based on the real Sri Lankan atmosphere, right? Again, I touched on this earlier. Pull in the rest of the Lankans around your area, okay? Whether that's local foods, fruits, accommodation, beverages, kolakanda in the morning, whatever it is, okay? Storytelling, engagement, inclusion, okay? Bring those things in. Tell the stories of Sri Lanka, build engagement around it, and be inclusive. We never win alone. So the more we can bring in our communities, the more we can grow. The third one, they do a great job of diversification of their spa services. So I put 3 in here: wellness you can feel, wellness you can buy, and wellness you can learn. Imagine if you develop your product, your hotel, your services on those 3 things. What could they do, right? What could you be communicating? Wellness you can feel, wellness you can buy, and wellness you can learn. Because in that way, you can get these guests to come to you for wellness they can feel. Perhaps they're coming for, perhaps they're coming for a massage or some type of treatment. They can feel it. Wellness you can buy could be them taking that home, taking the oils home, the herbs home, or even some equipment. And the last one, wellness you can learn, maybe they can sign up to join your newsletter or some webinars, or maybe they could buy books from you. Maybe they could sign up to a course online, right? So how do you diversify what you are doing already? Okay, this is something I do with clients all over the world. Take the core thing and then just spread it out in other ways so that you can make more money from what you're doing. And then the last thing that Bali does really, really well is create and own a niche. As I said earlier, when you say Bali, everybody knows what you're going for, right? Either wellness or perhaps surfing, but everybody knows why you're going to Bali. But that's not the case for Sri Lanka. They're full of confusion. Like, what is it? What's there? Can you go to Colombo? Is it safe? Is the food okay? Is it like India? They just don't know, right? So how do we create this niche around health, wellness, tropical nature retreats, island, like the nature of an island? Lots of people don't know we're an island. And there's something so romantic about islands, particularly for the West, right? Particularly for Europe, the Germans, the French. They love this. So how do we build that? How do we specify our benefits, brand them, and promote them? Again, these are all things you have. It's just about telling that story in a different way. So those were the 4 things I learned from Bali that I thought I would share. The second section of my presentation is around 2 of them in much more detail. One of them is customer communication elevation, aligned to the modules that you're able to access through the program. And the second is around storytelling and how we build that. So in the customer communication space, at the core of all trusted relationships is empathy, is understanding, right? If you want to have a relationship with your guest, with your client, because they're going to come for multiple treatments, massage, whatever it is that they're doing with you, they need to trust you, right? And I can tell you, when I landed in Sri Lanka, pandemic aside, it's very hard for me, even in Colombo, and if anyone wants to tell me, please send me a message later, to know where to go for Ayurvedic treatment. And every time I ask my friends, all of whom are Sri Lankan, right, I'd be like, I say to all these ladies, where should I go? They're all like, oh, I don't know, I'll ask my friend. Nobody knows, right? Nobody knows who you can trust, right? So if we don't know in Sri Lanka, for sure they don't know, right? So how do we communicate with them in a way that shows we understand them, so that they trust us? Because when they trust us, our business grows, right? The question you can ask yourself is this: how can you truly offer service to people if you don't first understand them? Okay, so are you building your services, your menu, your treatments around them or around you? Okay, and this is what I talk about: thinking about trends, thinking about what's going on in the world, looking at what they're already consuming in their home countries, and then servicing that to them, right? Because that's what they already want. So you can package it to show empathy, show them you understand this German consumer, and you're able to make your services aligned to them because of this. Because there is no human that doesn't have the need to be understood. Okay, we've seen this in babies as young as 18 minutes old. Okay, we're pro-social. We need to feel seen and heard. That's why the pandemic was so hard, right? We're not meant to be alone. The more understanding you show to your guests, the more you are able to build your business with them and all the people they are networked with. Again, these slides are designed so you can read them later, but there's a couple of pieces here around how do we do this? And lots of this is connected to the course content that you can access in the modules, okay? So uplifting communication skills. One of the key pieces in this is how you communicate is often more important than what you communicate. So for example, if you have a young team member who isn't confident in her English and is therefore not really communicating at all, it's best to say to her, communicate as much as you can regardless. It doesn't matter if your English is bad. Smile, use your body language, make eye contact, and do what you can, because so much of the how is more important than what. So the words might not be perfect, but the energy that you create with those guests is. So one of the things we always teach in our workshops for sales staff and service staff is to use questions to understand your guests, okay? This is the most important way to drive curiosity, to show warmth, and to create welcomeness. So on the bottom of the slide there, I put some examples of that. How do we teach our staff to practice patience? You know, they might be late, they're on vacation, they're on their own schedule, right? How do we imbue patience into our culture of our centers? How do we communicate clearly and concisely? Perhaps that's on emails or on social media, so that people understand what they're buying and how we offer it. How do we listen? How do we listen for what they're looking for, what their pain is, what they're hoping to achieve, why they've come, right? Generosity, it's huge in Sri Lanka. It's built into your blood, right? But how are we generous and proactive with our guests? And that doesn't mean giving things away. It might just mean giving them 5 minutes extra time to talk about how they feel, for example. How do we get to know our customers better? Do we do a questionnaire perhaps, or send them an email before? They won't all fill it in, but in order to get more information, so that when I arrive, you say, "Hi, Mimi, we're really happy to see you, and we hope we can help you with your poor neck." I'll be like, "Wow, yeah, thank you. That is why I've come, because I have a really bad neck pain, you know?" So how do we ensure that we can communicate on that level? Many of those things are small little fixes, and as I said, aligned to lots of the modules you can access online. But making your guests feeling welcome and relaxed by teaching your staff to communicate with them differently. The second part of that is to communicate your craft. What you are offering is a craft. It's very special what you do, and not many people can do it. And I know, having studied only the first 1,000 hours, how complicated it is, right? This is difficult, complex science built out of the natural world, right? But foreign guests, they don't know what Ayurveda is. And I know that even big brands, some big other export brands in Sri Lanka, have struggled to get consumers to understand what this is. But what they do know is what's trending. Okay, so here's where I touch on that. Plant-based foods, they understand. Superfoods, so all of the ingredients you're using, call them a superfood, they get it. Superfoods, they understand. Meditation, they know what that is. Power of breath, power of sleep. These things are trending. You can tap into them. Immunity building, of course, it's huge, right? Mindfulness, nutrition, and mental health, or sort of full body balance, okay? Those things, they understand. So put all of your information into them, okay? If you can talk about, a plant-based retreat where we use traditional superfoods to heal through a platform of immunity building and mindfulness, you have just reframed your entire previous sentence that says, "We are a center that offers Ayurvedic treatments for the body and mind, blah, 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 blah." And they're like, "What? I don't know what that is." Okay. So communicating your craft in a way that they can understand. Make it all about them. Ask before you explain. Okay. Why are you coming? How can we help? Probably 4 of the most powerful words in any language. How can we help? As soon as you say that, you endear people to you. Okay. What would be beneficial to you today? Okay, make it about them. Show passion, use simple explanations, and tap into trends that makes it easy for them to choose you. So those 2 slides talked about communication excellence. It's really rather simple, but it does take practice. The second part is telling the stories. And this is not something that you in your small businesses, or maybe you have big businesses, but it's not something you can do alone. This is something we have to tell as a group. We need the government to help us do it. We need to tell the stories of Sri Lanka in a new way, in a refreshed way, to really pull these tourists in, because storytelling is growth. That is fundamental. If you tell better stories, you grow. We are natural born storytellers. As human beings, we have been telling stories for hundreds of thousands of years. In fact, Jeremy Su, who's a social scientist, he studied storytelling, and he found out that 80% of our communication every single day is stories, right? Otherwise known as gossip, sometimes in Colombo. But storytelling, we love to tell stories. It's how we build our lives and businesses. This is how to build the economy, okay? So key to building this industry is telling our stories, right? They allow your brand, your hotel, your spa to tap into the conversation and connect with guests emotionally, drawing them in to your business and our country, okay? Storytelling is the currency to building your business and reach. You will not do it without it, okay? You can have the best therapists in the world in a lovely hotel, but if no one's coming, it doesn't matter. We need to tap into the global conversation. So again, I put a couple of examples there, just food for thought from today, literally today, okay? Germany nationwide is embracing a plant-based food program as part of its national nutrition strategy set by the government. Okay, that means the government of Germany is mandating plant-based food programs. Again, we know as Ayurvedic specialists that that's not really what we're about, but it doesn't matter, because you can go out there and tell a story to the Germans and say, we understand that as part of your national nutrition strategy, you're supposed to be more plant-based. Hello, come to Sri Lanka. Just so happens we have plant-based programs for health and wellness. Okay, brilliant way to tap into Germany. The global mindfulness meditation market. I'm sure some of you have heard of the app Calm or Headspace, two of the biggest apps in the world for meditation that you can listen to via your phone. It was valued at 97 million in 2021. It's projected to reach 307 million by 2031. I mean, that is incremental growth, 12% annual growth rate in meditation apps. Okay, go find them, tap into them, make your own. I'm joking, but this is a huge market, right? And we know that with the chanting, with the sound, with the all the work that we're doing in Ayurvedic, Sanskrit, whatever it is, there is space to tap into meditation and mindfulness. Number 3, plant-based foods have grown by 11% in the last year to over 5 billion in the USA alone. Okay, again, plant-based food, nutrition, natural fruits and herbs, kolakanda, kitty butt, whatever it is we want to pull them in, right? We have it. I'm vegetarian. I've been vegetarian for 20 years. I've lived in maybe 17 countries. The best country on earth for vegetarians is Sri Lanka, because I can eat every meal without ever being left out. Whoever's auntie's house I go to, there's food for me to eat, right? So how do we tap into this and pull them in? And the last one here, 75% of US consumers describe plant-based foods as healthy. Again, just showing you that this move to plant-based treatments, foods, living, everything that helps us package Ayurveda for the global tourist is growing and powerful. So it is there for you to go out and look at and build as a country. As I said, stories will enable us to drive more bookings as well as sharing. Okay, so the World Tourism Organization categorized each step of the tourism process into 5. It's on the right there: dreaming, researching, booking, experiencing, and sharing. And of course, all of those 5 are critical. Many of the global markets don't know what Ayurveda is. How do we categorize it by those 5 phases? How do we catch them when they're dreaming about where they're going to go this summer? How do we help them when they're researching to know that Sri Lanka and the wellness side of Sri Lanka is where they should come? How do we make booking easy? That's a different discussion. And then, of course, the experience we've touched on today: customer experience, communication, treatment experience, and then sharing. Because we know as human beings, as I said earlier, 80% of us, we want to share stories every day. How do we drive uptake in Ayurvedic experiences? By making sure people are sharing. The answer to all of those is to tell stories, to create more stories about the work that you are already doing. I put an example just here on this slide. I had fun when I was preparing this deck last week. As a marketer, really, I'm an author, so I write a lot. Rethinking some of the marketing messaging, just to give you ideas. I put here as the headline: Ayurveda, the magic of living wisely. Suddenly the tourist is like, oh, I want to know some magic, and living wisely, that sounds approachable. It's not necessarily about like fasting or vomiting or any of that scary stuff. It's living wisely. Yeah, I like the sound of that. Then I put some examples on the left: the knowledge of life. You know, come and experience the knowledge of life on the island of Sri Lanka. Herbal health, balanced body, holistic philosophies, how to live a healthy, wholesome, and more fulfilled life. Your unique set of physical, mental, and spiritual characteristics, which of course are doshas, but they don't know that, and that's fine, right? So how do you use this language to help them understand what you're doing and really build that story? Because we want to tell the world, right? We want this content on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever it is, right? On a mobile, everywhere, being emotive, connecting your brand, your hotel, your spa, your practice to the wider Ayurvedic movement, creating appealing educational content as well as images. I saw last week, I don't know if you saw it on Instagram, but Raw Media published a video last week about the number of edible flowers in Sri Lanka. I mean, it went crazy. My friends in Dubai were resharing this video, right? And it was just about edible flowers. So it's educational content. It was about the names of flowers in Sri Lanka and everybody was sharing it, right? So how do you create educational content that people want to engage with? How do you help your guests understand what they can buy from you? Remember what I said earlier, what they feel, what they experience, what they can learn, what can they buy? How do you repurpose that? And how do you take your experts beyond your borders, right? Your lead doctors, your lead practitioners, your therapists, your voice, whether that's through social media or a conference once a year. How do you tell the world about the work you're doing? So in summary of all that excitement this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, these were the 3 pillars that we looked at in terms of revitalizing the wellness industry in Sri Lanka. Number 1, we need to encourage more Sri Lankans to join us, and of course, then train them to stay, with a significant focus on our women. Number 2, we need to ensure best-in-class service to our guests so that we are neutralized against all of the other service offerings across our region. And number 3, we need to tell our stories to guests worldwide and really drive our story out there. Underpinning all of that is empathy, understanding our people, understanding other people, and helping them understanding Sri Lanka. Thank you very much. I'm definitely able to take some questions if you would like. Otherwise, you can see my details on this slide. My website is empathyeverywhere.co. You got my email address there and my social handle. So if anyone wants any of this information, I'm a big believer in sharing. So just get in touch with me and I will send that over to you immediately. I would love to stay in touch. If anyone wants tea next time I'm in Colombo, I would love to see you. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for having me in your room today. And I hope that this is just the beginning of some really powerful discussions for your businesses and your people. So thank you.
Thank you, Minnie. So, is there any question?
Hi, Minnie.
Hi.
This is Vipula. Thank you very much for that wonderful last year's presentation. And you would have seen a spellbound audience here listening to what you're saying. Just a small question about this terminology, Ayurveda. Now, some 15 years ago, when Kerala launched Ayurveda in a big way, we felt that they have virtually hijacked the word Ayurveda, so we did not be able to use that terminology. Instead, we might have to do something else. But how is the situation now? Can we still go ahead with the term Ayurveda? Thank you.
Thank you. Pushpika, could you repeat the second half of that? It's just the line is a little bad, so I could just get the second bit.
What happened was, I think about 15 years ago, when we launched Ayurveda with a massive campaign using CNN, they positioned Kerala as an Ayurvedic destination. Right? And at that time, although Sri Lanka had Ayurveda offering, we felt that they had completely taken over Ayurveda, the brand. So now, after 15 years, we think we can still compete with them with whatever the specialties we have, or do we need to rebrand?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And the microphone isn't, you can see, I'm like, what's going on? I got most of it. Thank you very much for the question. I think that if I'm understanding it correctly, the reality for me is that we're at a time when you have the opportunity to significantly relaunch everything. So regardless of what happened 15 years ago and who sort of took ownership of the brand, Ayurveda, the word Ayurvedic, the context of that, there's a big wide world out there. And because of the significant health pressure on our world, suddenly the rest of, you know, the continent and everywhere else actually is looking for new solutions, because this pressure on our systems, the pressure on the healthcare system, there's 400 million people with depression. They're looking for new solutions. And as I said, whilst I don't have the data on paper to support it, everything I have studied and seen would tell me that the opportunity for Sri Lanka is so huge. It doesn't matter who owned what before. Now there is a brand new section of consumers that need you and what you do. And if we're able to build that story, as I mentioned today, in their language, against the benefits they're looking for, against the pain points that they need solving, you have all the opportunity to do that. But one of the ways that we have to protect that is we have to, as I said earlier, you have to find the benefits and the problems, right? We have to be a solution to what people are struggling with, because otherwise you get back to that very generic space of palm trees and coastlines, which are utterly beautiful, but they don't own it, right? So then you become parity. In marketing, we call it parity branding, right? Where, like you were mentioning earlier, someone else took the brand or somebody else had that space and you felt you couldn't own it. That's only an issue when you have parity. When you create differentiation, you open up new markets. And you see that all the time. If you think about, consumer goods, maybe Adidas versus Nike, right? Adidas trainers and Nike trainers, I mean, or a soccer ball, they're exactly the same, okay? But what people are buying is the brand, the engagement, the story, the context of that. It's the same with choosing a hotel, right? Why do you choose the Four Seasons versus the Mandarin Oriental, right? They're both owning hotels. They're both owning hospitality. So my take is you can't own Ayurveda. Nobody can. And that's why I'm so passionate about building this, because I think India is far more well known for it at the moment, but we have so much more depth that we could be creating for Sri Lanka. So I think the opportunity is ripe for that discussion. And that's why storytelling is so important, because facts and figures and data will only ever go so far. The way to building your brand is through the heart. And the way to the heart is through some of those benefits and solutions to problems. I hope that answered your question, sir, because I couldn't hear you totally, but I hope that at least got halfway there.
Thank you. So, is there any other questions? Thank you, Mimi. So it seems they don't have any other questions. So thank you very much for your very informative and very interesting session. So I'm sure everybody may have got a lot of insight out of you. So thank you, Mimi, again. So we'll meet on next session and next Monday. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And for anyone who does want to ask questions separately, please get in touch. Have a lovely day, everyone. Bye.